Hi, and welcome to another video by Get It Done Home Repairs. Today's project, we're going to be laying down some weed matting in here before we put down the crushed stone on top of it. The reason you're going to put the weed matting underneath the bottom of it is because if you put just crushed stone in there, the weeds are going to come through and it's going to be absolutely horrible. So take the extra time and put down your weed matting before you do anything. All right, let me show you what products we need, and then we're going to get started and we're going to get this job done. First thing we're going to do is we've picked up some weed matting in our local landscaping supply store. I would recommend don't buy the stuff in the big box stores, because the stuff you're going to buy in the big box store, you're going to be pulling your hair out because the weeds are going to grow right through the material, and to try to pull them out is virtually impossible because the weeds grow down into it and they come through it and you can't pull it through the fabric. So get it at a local supply house. You'll be very happy that you did. While you're there, you're going to pick up staples to actually hold the fabric down to the ground while you're putting in, right before you put the stones in. This way it'll hold it nice and tight to the ground so you can put the stones on top. Again, don't buy them in the big box store because these are probably twice as thick as the ones you buy in the big box stores, and they cost you the same thing in a landscaping company. We're going to need a utility knife. We're going to need a scissor, a hammer possibly to drive the stakes in, a couple of shovels, and a rake to level the area off itself, and of course something to kneel on. All right, so let's get in there, let's get started, and let's get this job done. So this is what it looks like before we start the project. As you can see, the weeds and a little bit of grass is growing through, and it's just horrible to get in there and try to constantly pull them out to try to control the weed situation. All right, so I just wanted to show you what it looks like before, and now we're going to get in there, we're going to get started, and we'll see what it looks like after, and of course it's going to control our problem with all these weeds. So the first thing we did now, of course, we got in there with our shovel. We took all the weeds that are underneath there. We took them all out, got as much out as we possibly could. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to come in here with our rake and we're going to level off the area. So that way it's a nice level area for the weed matting to go on top of it so we can staple it down. Most importantly is you want to make sure that you get all the weeds out, because if you don't get them out, they're going to continue to grow underneath the weed matting, and you're going to wind up with them coming through any kind of mat, no matter what you put down. So get the majority of them out, and then we're going to level it off right up to the grass line so we can get in here and then put our weed matting in. And we're going to cut the weed matting around all the existing shrubs that are in there so that we don't actually have to do anything to take them out. All right, so once we have it fairly level, next thing we'll do is grab our weed mat and we'll lay it out, and we'll place it in there. Now the weed matting comes in different widths and different lengths. This just happens to be the length that I needed and the width that I needed. The reason I got it this width is because I want to go around the shrubs that are in there already, cut a little slot out to bend it around so that we don't have to cut a hole through the center of it and try to put it in there. Now as you can see, weed matting cuts fairly easy. Just get in here with a scissor, you lay it out to the desired length and the width that you need. And then we'll take it and we'll lay it down inside the area, and then we'll cut it around the shrubs, and then we'll put in another piece through the bottom of it. So we laid our matting down. We're going to mark the location of where the shrubs are. We laid the matting really close to the foundation because we don't want any weeds coming up real close to the foundation right there. So we put it right up so it's touching into it. We're going to cut it around any kind of wires that go down inside there so we have a nice tight fit there, and then nothing can come through that area there. All right, next thing we do is we're going to take where the location of the shrubs are, we're going to cut a little slot inside the fabric that we're putting down. We're going to cut it all the way down, and we're going to put it around the root area of the shrub itself, and then we'll tack it down with some of those staples, but I'll show you that in just a minute. So we're just going to cut a slot down to it, wrap it around the plant itself, and that'll take care of the problem with the overlapping area so that the weeds don't grow through where the shrub is growing as well. Now we're moving on to the second one. We're going to cut a slot in that as well, and again it cuts very easily with a scissor or a utility knife, whatever you have handy. It cuts fairly easy. All right, we'll cut it down to the root area down there, and then we'll take it and we'll lay it down once we cut the third one out, just like that. Again, cut it all the way down to the root itself. Now in this application, I am doubling up the fabric because I don't want anything coming through here, but that's personal preference. Once is usually good enough, but I like to overkill this area so we don't have to worry about anything. The shovel there is because of the wind today. The wind is blowing the weed matting around a little bit. So we're going to put it underneath the shrub itself, pull it around. If we need to notch it out a little bit more, we'll get in there with a scissor and we'll cut it back a little bit more. But this looks like it's going to be fairly tight against the root. Now, of course, as the plant grows, it will come up a little bit, but at least this way here, it'll keep any weeds from growing around it. Okay. Take your time, put it as close to the root area where it comes up as possible, just like that. Same thing on our third right here. And once we have it around all three of them, then we'll roll out the fabric again. We'll put it for the length that we need, and then we'll cut it to length again. And we're going to grab our staples, and we're going to just hammer them down. It's really not a big deal. You may be able to push them in by hand, but I usually try to tap it down because sometimes you'll hit a rock inside there. As you can see with the case is right here, it hit a rock and it bent the staple a little bit, so we're just going to move it to a new location, tap it down real close to the foundation itself to keep anything from growing up close to the house itself. All right, and we'll tap it down. You don't want to over tighten this, just to hold the fabric in place until you get the stone on top of it. And we'll continue down. You don't need a lot of them. You probably need one every 3 or 4 feet just to hold the fabric down. But that's personal preference. I am going to put a couple of extras in here because, as I told you, it's a little bit windy today. And instead of having the fabric blow around on me, we're going to tap it down so that it's fairly snug. Now down on the bottom over here, we are going to take that one back out to put the other fabric over it, so it'll actually, one fabric will overlap the other, so we won't have anything where the weeds are growing where the two fabrics come together. But this is just to temporarily hold it down until we lay out the second fabric and overlap each other. As I said, real close to the house itself, we'll tap them down and it'll hold everything in place. Now, if it looks a little bit bumpy, don't worry about it. Once you put the stone on it, the stone is going to take care of that problem. Now, we laid out our second weed mat that's going to overlap the first one that we put down. We're going to cut a little bit of a slot in that so that we can push that up underneath the root as well. Now, remember, they're going to overlap by probably, I'm going to say, in this case, probably 6 inches, but you can overlap it as far as you want. As long as they overlap each other and the weeds can't grow through, it'll be perfect. Now we're going to put our staples in where the two fabrics come together. We'll come down here and we'll tap it down in here as well. And then real close to the grass line, of course, we're going to put one inside there. The stone, again, is going to cover it up, so you don't have to worry about anything. Just this way here. The wind doesn't blow anything away while we're working on that. And as you can see, my two dogs are over here watching what we're doing, and they're not dumb. They know to stay in the shade and not lay out in the sun. All right, so this is what it looks like now that we have the weed matting down. We have it stapled in place, one overlapping the other, just like that. Okay, so once we have our weed matting down and everything is set the way we want to, we grab our stone, we just lay it on top of it. We're going to come in here with a rake and we're going to rake it out so that it's fairly level. It's personal preference how thick you want to have the rocks. I like to have a good bed of rocks in there so that way it'll actually not have any kind of the black tarp itself showing through. All right, we're going to get in here with a rake and we're just going to rake it until it's fairly level. Just like that. Okay, so as you can see, putting down the weed mat and installing the rock is a fairly easy job. The only thing I'm going to tell you is when you have the weed mats and they're crossing each other, don't have them end side by side. Make sure one of them overlaps the other by probably at least 6 inches, 12 inches, so that way the weeds will not grow in between. So as you can see, we're just going to continue with the rock further down over here, and then that's it. This job is done. Now, if you choose to put a border in right here, you could do that. We may do that. I'm not really sure what we're going to do right now, but we may put a border in right there of blocks along the edge of it. I did decide to put the blocks down on the edge here just to retain the stones from moving, especially in the wintertime when you get a lot of snow and a lot of ice on there. We didn't want the stones to work their way down to the grassy area, so we decided to put the stones in. Putting the stones in is actually fairly easy. Just lay them in there. You could contour it to the grass line if you choose to, or you can cut a straight line. In this case, I actually decided just to follow the contour of the grass itself because it was already cut and a fairly straight line. As you can see, my dogs are having a grand old time back there watching me work. Alright, next thing we're going to do now is we're going to pull the rocks down so it touches right up against the new stones that we put in, and as you can tell, we had to use quite a few bags of stones to cover everything up. Now the stones, when we put them in, we did set it up on top of the weed matting just to keep any weeds from growing in between the stones that we had putting down, or the blocks we had putting down. Now, you may get some weeds growing through there, but the majority of it is not going to come through there because the weed mat is underneath the blocks that we chose to put in. All right, so we're going to continue down the line. We're going to put the rest of the stone in here. We're going to bring it right up to the block itself. And, well, of course, we're going to wet the area down because we stressed the grass by working in this area here. We'll pour down the rest of the stones and get this job all finished up.
Love it.
Right, and this is what the project looks like now. After we poured in the rest of the stones and brought the new stones all the way up to the house itself and up to the blocks that we install. But that's it. We solved the problem. No more weeds will be growing in this area here. The good thing about this is that if you do get weeds growing through there, you can just pull them right out. If they do happen to take root in the rock, it's really not a big deal. You just pull them right out because they will not go down through the matting down into the soil itself. All right, but problem solved. But that's it. This job is done, and we're on to the next one. All right, as always, thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one.